Folks, before we begin, please be aware that we are recording this webinar. If you have any questions about the resources, we encourage you to follow up via email at support@electionsgroup.com. My name is Rebecca. I am the Communications and Program Manager here at the Elections Group. And for those of you who may be joining us for the first time, the Elections Group is an election administration consulting firm. We partner with state and local election officials to implement new programs or improve processes for voters and stakeholders alike. We provide guidance, resources, and direct management support for jurisdictions. And our team is made up of former election officials and election experts from across the United States. We are pleased to have you all with us today for our next highlight of resources for the election administration community. Each week, we will showcase resources from the elections group, paired with resources from other organizations in the election space. Every 4 weeks, we will focus on a different topic, and we'll take a deeper dive into the resources available each week. So this month, we are focusing on election security. And this week specifically, we are highlighting the election group's election security in a time of disturbance. And I am very excited to have with us today, Tina Barton. Tina is a senior election expert with the elections group and vice chair of the Committee for Safe and Secure Elections. She'll be sharing their guide, 5 Steps to Safer Elections. All right, Tina, I am going to get your PowerPoint ready and pass it over to you.
Thank you, Rebecca. So excited to be with all of you today and appreciate this opportunity to share out some Committee for Safe and Secure Elections resources. So thank you. So the Committee for Safe and Secure Elections is a committee that is made up of approximately 15 current and law enforcement, as well as 15 current and former election officials. We came together a couple of years ago looking to see how we could be helpful in this space, recognizing that election officials were being threatened, that there had been a change in the atmosphere and really the perception from the public about their elections as well as their election administrators, and talking about how we could work in collaboration between the election and law enforcement communities to help make our elections safer and more secure, but also really focus on the safety and security of those who administer elections. And so we came up with 5 steps to safer elections, which really is a model that could be transferred over to multiple areas of doing business or working in government in order to be successful. And so our very first step is to meet with counterparts and other stakeholders. When we talk about meeting with counterparts and stakeholders, we're looking about meeting with election officials, law enforcement, but also bringing in other stakeholders in your community and in your county that could be public information officers, hazmat teams, could be someone from your facilities team, could also be someone from the community, especially if you're in a community that has had a history of experience with intimidation or voter suppression, that you may want to bring stakeholders to the table as you talk through some of the issues that you might face in an election cycle, making sure that all voices are being heard and respected. Next, we say that once you've come together to have that meeting, to share not only your experiences and contact information with each other, and the importance of doing that is that you will want to have someone that you know their name, you're familiar with their face, maybe you've had multiple conversations with them. Should you find yourself in a situation where you are being threatened, harassed, or abused in some way, or there's some sort of a disturbance at the precinct or polling location or counting facility, that this is an individual who is familiar with your processes, familiar with the election laws in your community, and also that the election official is familiar with the perspective from law enforcement of what they're allowed to do, not allowed to do in spaces they can and cannot be in based on state law. So when you're sharing those experiences and that contact information, you're really creating a relationship and a bond there that we're a team here, and our ultimate goal is that we have safe, secure elections and that all of our voters in our community, all eligible voters, are able to vote freely, fairly, and that the process would be accurate and without threats and intimidation. We are also asking that they share out information like calendar dates that would be important, dates when equipment might be moving from one location to another, dates when they are having some sort of an open meeting, say a logic and accuracy test, where there might be members of the public there in larger numbers than normal. We also say in the sharing portion, you should talk about the expectations. What is it that election officials are seeking from law enforcement? And that can vary by the scenarios, having those conversations, but also for law enforcement to share if they have restrictions on their resources. And many of them are down in manpower. So would they have the staffing required to meet the expectations of the election official? And does there need to be some negotiation there? Third, we have where you come together and agree. So you've met now, you've shared all of this background and agreeing with each other on that of what you're going to do to move forward. What are those rules of engagement? Putting a plan in place that speaks to your incident response, crisis communication, your continuity of operations plan, and then putting it into practice. And part of that practice is doing tabletop exercises. And that's something that at the Committee for Safe and Secure Elections, we have been doing across the country. We've been in over 35 states in the last 26 months. Another resource that we have out there is a video. If you are an election official, this video might be valuable for you to share with your law enforcement. The person narrating this is Sheriff Paul Pinzone. He's the retired sheriff out of Maricopa County, Arizona, of which has experienced a lot of election attention, and that of individuals who have acted out in ways that at times have been against the law, and that the sheriff and his team have had to step in and to be helpful to the election officials there. The sheriff here walks through the 5-step process, but also as a law enforcement officer, he really appeals to the other law enforcement who are watching the video to become partners with their election administrators to help them and to understand the need and really kind of the magnitude of what it is that we're seeing in our communities when it comes to threats to election officials. We've also created a series of PSAs that we have put out there that have individuals that you can see here on the slide that vary different political backgrounds, as well as individuals who have served in the military, some that are currently serving in law enforcement, and those that are currently serving as election officials. These videos help to really humanize the election officials, who they are, but it's also really a kind of a stern message from those in law enforcement, as well as those former in the military, to say, what we're seeing happen and the threats that we're seeing to election officials is something that you see happen in war-torn countries, not in America. And I think these videos will be compelling if you want to put those out on your social media platforms and share those out, where it shows really this partnership that has developed between the law enforcement and election officials, and really just reminding people that we are a nation of laws. If you go out to our website at safe-elections.org, or you follow the QR code here that is on the screen, we have what are called quick reference guides. In law enforcement, they're often called pocket guides. And we have one of these for every single state. The Committee for Safe and Secure Elections worked with the AGs, secretaries of state, chief election administrators in every single state in the country to create this little guide of election-related laws that law enforcement especially could have as a quick reference guide. The sheriff that I often travel with and speak about regarding Committee for Safe and Secure Elections will say, how many of you as law enforcement officers remember when you covered elections in your academy training? Not a single hand will ever go up in the room. And that's because it's something in the past they really haven't had to be that knowledgeable about. And they don't really receive any training that is election related. So this quick reference guide we've seen be an incredible resource to law enforcement across the country. We have printed over 100,000 of these, and they're out in the hands of law enforcement in all of our states. We've also put together a resource that talks about swatting attempts. Swatting is something that we have seen happen, something that was happening more in the gaming industry, where they basically would make a call to the law enforcement on a line and saying that there's someone in a particular home. They typically will talk about the type of gun that the individual has, and they're usually either saying that they've already hurt someone or they're going to hurt someone. And so they use language that is called call to duty speak. And they're doing that now. These swatting attempts we're seeing happen to election officials where they're doing the same type of thing, where they're saying that they're calling, usually it's not 911, it's typically the main number in law enforcement offices because it's harder for them to trace it. But they are calling in saying that there's someone with a gun, someone who's going to harm someone, and they're intentionally targeting that of election officials' homes in order to have law enforcement respond to the home in a large presence, as well as sometimes could be even aggressive presence. We also have a resource out there that is the elections group resource that talks about the strategies for enhancing ballot drop box security. We've already seen a couple of instances just in this election cycle alone where there has been some attempts at damage to ballot boxes. So here's a checklist with some tips that we provide during our training to help keep your ballot boxes safe, help keep them secure, and some security measures that you can put up in order to help keep it lit around there, keep some cameras on it. So if there were to be someone who had some bad actor type ideas, that they're going to be caught on camera and a light is going to shine on who they are, helping us to track them down a lot easier. Another resource that we have out there is called a Memorandum of Understanding. As I mentioned, law enforcement sometimes will have some restrictions on what their availability is, what their manpower is, their resources. And election officials, on the other hand, also have some expectations and wants and needs of law enforcement. So this is kind of a formal template of a memorandum of understanding where both sides can come together and say, hey, these are the scope of services. This is what it is that we're aiming to do. And this is what we agree on so that you have a document in place. The elections group has also created these amazing crisis communication intake forms. It's quite common when we go out to do these tabletop exercises that when we ask communities if they have holding statements regarding any of the scenarios that we have gone over, the majority in the room do not. So these crisis communication intake forms really have a way of kind of memorializing what has happened there, putting all of that, the details of the incident, who has been notified, but it also has the holding statements in there for you. So they're kind of a plug and play, if you will. You can just put the details in so that you're not releasing statements to the public during a time when you are maybe in the middle of an adrenaline rush or a time of high emotion, that these are things that you can use to get information out, get it out quickly, and do so in a really succinct, organized manner. You can see down in the lower right-hand corner, all the different types of scenarios that they have these intake forms for that have the holding statements. I think this is something that will be incredibly helpful to election officials, especially this election cycle. And again, a QR code that takes you to those forms. The Committee for Safe and Secure Elections has also put together kind of a 4-step guide to working with challenging visitors and disruptive content creators. It's not uncommon for law enforcement to have seen individuals come in with cameras, their phones, recording, trying to get law enforcement to say or do things on camera that could then make them look bad and maybe even show that they're not following protocol. We have seen the same type of approach now happening to election officials across the country. These individuals often are hoping to catch you saying or doing something on camera that they can then put on their YouTube channels and make money, really is what it is that they're trying to do. And so this is kind of a 4-step guide for you in how to deal with the content creators that might come to your office. The elections group has also put together some really wonderful de-escalation posters. These are great to keep in your office, whoever, especially your frontline staff, but anybody who's answering the phone, anybody who is dealing with the public at the counter. I also encourage in our tabletop exercises for them to consider printing these and putting in precinct and poll kits that are going out to the polling locations so that their precinct workers are aware of some de-escalation techniques, and also to use these during their training of poll workers too, because I think we're all aware that we are living in a pretty divisive culture right now, and people are going to be very passionate when they come to the ballot box. And so here are some great tips on how to maybe de-escalate a situation that could be on its way to getting out of control. We always end all of our tabletop exercises with just recognizing how stressful and really kind of how hard the last 4 years have been on all of us in the election arena, the stress that we've been under, the scrutiny, the challenges that we've faced in our jobs, even going through COVID, going through the 2020 cycle, and with so many of you having been threatened, harassed, or abused over the last 4 years, that we recognize that we need to take, a deep breath in, exhale, and we really need to take care of ourselves. We need to take care of our teams. It's so easy for us to put that off as just one more task that we need to do, when really it's not a task. It's really what we need to be at our very best. So we have a great webinar here where we talk to retired Michigan State Police Captain Harold Love, who's also a licensed therapist who specializes in working with law enforcement that have dealt with trauma. They also interview the Carter Center on there and some resources they have specifically created. And then the elections group has put together a really wonderful resource that is checking in with yourself, recognizing the signs of stress, trauma, and burnout, kind of a resilience in a box type resource. And I strongly encourage all of you to at least take a few minutes every day, maybe walk through some of these quick exercises, give your brain a break, give your emotions a break, and maybe even just take a quick walk and follow some of the guide suggestions. So again, a wonderful resource, and I hope you all will check that out. That's it. Please let me know if you have any questions. You can reach the Committee for Safe and Secure Elections at safeelections.org.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Tina. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for the presentation. It was so informative. And we've placed all of the links to the resources in the chat for today's conversation as well.
Thank you,
All right.
Rebecca.
Thanks. All right, we are going to get right into another resource from the elections group, and we also have an in the wild example for everybody on the call today as well. So for the tag resource, we are going to be sharing our election security in a time of disturbance guide. This guide was designed to help election administrators tackle rising threats to election security. It offers practical advice on protecting infrastructure, managing risks, and maintaining public trust amidst political unrest and misinformation. The guide outlines steps for enhancing physical security, forming strong partnerships with law enforcement, and addressing potential cyber vulnerabilities. Administrators can learn how to mitigate threats to polling places, staff, and election systems, ensuring a resilient and transparent elections process. By following this guide, election officials can better prepare for potential disruptions in the coming days, weeks, and months. And it offers specific recommendations for risk assessment, crisis communication, and also contingency planning. The document underscores the importance of public-facing transparency, especially during times of widespread misinformation, to help uphold voter confidence. This guide stresses the role of technology, particularly in defending against cyber threats and securing election equipment and voter information. Practical tips on cybersecurity awareness for staff and the use of security tools further bolster election defenses. Election officials can use these insights to create a multi-layered defense strategy that anticipates challenges, whether they are from external actors or internal vulnerabilities. For administrators managing ballot drop boxes or in-person voting location, this guide provides concrete measures to protect these specific areas. From surveillance to chain of custody procedures, election officials can enhance security while maintaining accessibility, and trust. This comprehensive approach equips election teams with the knowledge to act swiftly and effectively in an ever-evolving security landscape. So we highly recommend that you download this guide and take a peek at it today. We are also going to place into a chat. We've updated this guide for 2024 with some additional checklists. So we'll make sure that you have an updated version in the chat as well. All right, now our example out in the wild that we are excited to show is from St. Johns County, Florida. Um, they have an election security webpage that offers detailed, transparent, and comprehensive information on security measures, including voter registration verification, network integrity, and tabulation safeguards. It highlights their use of state certified voting equipment, logic and accuracy tests, strict access controls, and both electronic and paper audit trails. These efforts, coupled with their partnership with federal agencies like CISA, ensure a high level of security and public confidence. This is a really great example for election administrators who are looking to provide more information to their voters on safeguarding the elections process. So kudos to St. Johns County, Florida, and keep up the great work. All right, everyone, that is a wrap for today. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you so much to Tina for a great discussion. Resources mentioned in today's discussion have all been placed into the chat, and as always, our inbox is open. If you have any additional questions, please give us an email at support@electionsgroup.com. Thank you so much, and we will see you next week.